Innovation is crucial to the continuing success of any organization or even individual for that matter. To get some tips on how to improve your business and ourselves, we are joined by Douglas Kruger, who has written a book on succeeding in the SMME space. Douglas, thanks for your time. Just a few things that I got from reading your website. You mentioned something on innovation, that South African consumers no longer respond to legacy. They're all about innovation. This is not a new concept, though.
Well, it's one that people are not talking about. In fact, it was from an important survey done last year, and the findings were exactly as you say, that legacy is not hitting home for people anymore. We are responding increasingly to how you are innovating into my world today. And that changes a lot of things. It changes the marketing tone that we use in terms of focusing on an energetic now, and it changes what we portray to the world around us. But also, and I think this is the more important part, it is a massive threat for the old dinosaurs who are not necessarily aware of this shift and are still playing on the idea of legacy. It's also a great boon to the upcoming companies if they're aware of it and know how to play on this dynamic.
Yeah, Douglas, it's thanks for joining us. Maybe if you can give us a little bit of your background as well. I mean, and maybe also in the book. I mean, you obviously, I'm assuming, interviewed a lot of CEOs and, you know, to come to this research. But maybe give us a little bit of color around the research process that you went through and also a little bit of your background, maybe, so that we can just get a feeling of why we should be listening to you.
Well, absolutely. Let's start with the contributors. There have been some top names that have contributed generously to this one. Michael Jordan has written the foreword, and one of the things he very kindly said was that this book doesn't have the danger of being a single process that has a work or fail dynamic. Because it has a 50 ways approach, you've got different options for different sizes of businesses. We have contributions by the marketing manager of BMW, which won Coolest Brand last year, the Dean of Gibbs, but I think more importantly, we have contributions from real entrepreneurs in South Africa. I mean, one of them, unwittingly, was a vendor just outside of Soweto selling bunny chow, and we can learn some fabulous lessons about innovation from him, things that he's doing right and things that he's doing wrong, because he's not wealthy but could be. In terms of my own credentials, I've been a speaker now for about 10-12 years. My previous book with Penguin Random House was about how to position yourself as a top name in your industry. Essentially, it's how to be the Oprah of talk shows, or, and I used to say, the Clarkson of cars. We can't really do that one anymore.
Douglas, how do you differentiate this from being another self-help book? So if I'm going to pick this up and I'm thinking, I want to be, you know, the Oprah of whatever the case may be, how am I guaranteed that by reading this book, and you say there are 50 different approaches, I've got at least one chance of getting it right?
Well, I think if you haven't got a shot in the dark with 50 different approaches aimed at different levels, then there may not be a book on innovation that can help. But in this case, what I've done is I've actually taken a look at all of the leading titles and asked, what are the most useful principles? And I think people generally don't have the time to go through all of these leading titles. We're so operational. We don't have the time to dissect them and find out what is useful. So about a third of the content in the book really is a summary of everything that we know about innovation today. And I actually make the comment in the opening chapters where I say, I will recommend books, but I don't want you to have to buy them. To me, that feels like a cop-out. If you bought this one, you should get everything that you need to know.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, okay, maybe let's look at some of the branding and the marketing aspect. I mean, I went to a marketing conference the other day, and they were saying these days, I mean, strategy is almost irrelevant these days. It's all about culture. I mean, maybe your views on that?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, that plays on from the first book, which says build tribes of believing followers. Apple, of course, is the most famous example of that one, perhaps Harley Davidson as well. And I then take that into the practical realm of innovation, where I say, all right, if you buy into the idea of creating tribes and building a lifestyle brand, how do you practically go about actually doing that? And I have chapters on things like adding personality to your brand, adding theatre to your brand. And people like Richard Branson, who I mentioned in the first book on expert positioning, certainly do that. But there are innovative ways in which you can make the company do that. And just a simple example off the top of my mind, if you're a restaurant serving flambe, turn off the lights as you do. Add theatre to what you do. You know, that may sound trivial, but when you look at examples like Cirque du Soleil, they've taken a simple offering and they have taken it to another level. They've made it exponentially greater and revived what was essentially a dying art form and made it a major industry once again.
Douglas, what are some of the innovation trends that you've seen?
Well, one that that I quite enjoy is the trend toward open sourcing of ideas, getting people to give ideas both externally and internally, idea searches, rewarding people, and so on. And one of the great things that does is it gets the wrong person for the job. And I have a couple of examples in certain chapters about how thinking outside of industries can be much more original than the conditioned thinking within an industry. If you get an architect to do an architect's job, you're going to get obvious architectural solutions. But if you pull in a gardener or a tattoo artist or your 5-year-old kid, you're going to get very strange and interesting ideas, 80% of which mimight be dross, 20% might be gold.
Okay, so thinking outside the box.
Absolutely. Different patterns of thinking.
Thank you so much to you, Douglas. That was Douglas Kruger. He's written a book on succeeding in the SMME space and has some interesting thoughts. If you want to be innovative, maybe pull some different resources in and see where that takes you. That's where we leave our discussion here, but standing by in the west of